All right, we're live.
Yes, we
Right.
are live. Greetings.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. This week, we are talking about different healing modalities and spiritual practices. This is a continuing on our theme of spiritual hygiene and what we describe spiritual hygiene as is just keeping your mind renewed and keeping yourself connected to spirit, and keeping your energy moving forward and flowing and not being stagnant. It's the renewing of your mind. um and so last week we did an assessment that kind of lets you know where you stand as far as whether or not the spiritual practice that you have is working, and if it's or maybe that you need to start a spiritual practice. And depending on how you answered those questions, you saw Uni and I kind of answer those questions live, um in real time, and assessing where we felt like we maybe need to do a little growing, where we feel like we were doing pretty good but maybe still had a little ways to go, or and so based on those results, we're now giving you some tools that you can use to kind of move some of that stuck energy, to create better habits, to feel more connected. And we have a whole list of them on, if you look in the description, there's a link to a Google Doc that gives you a nice little breakdown. It's a table of different practices. We have it broken down by category, just some categories. They're loose, they're not like in stone. These are just the categories that we felt you could kind of break these practices up into. And the categories that we have are releasing practices, receiving practices, or practices to prepare for receiving. And that's our theme for next month. So I'm sure we'll really get into that a little more next month, but we'll touch on it today. Repatterning, which is kind of programming your mind to look for the good, to connect with God, to not always be in that ego mind of negativity. And integrating and activating and connecting and restoring. So we'll get more into what each of those means a little later. Uni, it's so great to have you as always, my spiritual sister. Oh my gosh, I'm so great. I'm so blessed to have you as my co-host. Welcome,
Likewise.
welcome, welcome.
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm really excited to get into these spiritual modalities, all these
Yes.
healing practices, and different ways that we can really stay in alignment with our higher selves, with our true selves, with our whole selves. I feel like
Hmm.
we are really fragmented out here in this world, and sometimes you just don't realize it until you start bringing those pieces back, to yourself. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and share and hopefully help someone,
Yeah.
at least one person.
At least one, more would be nice, but
Mhm.
one is sufficient.
Yes, it'll do.
Oh, so we're just gonna dive in because last week we got into this conversation and we went over like our time that we normally allot for this. So we're gonna just dive in. We're gonna start with this first category of releasing. I think that's a good place to start, especially when you're in the beginning of your spiritual journey. There's just so much to release, right? And the releasing is continual throughout your spiritual journey because you're always digging deeper and getting more of the gunk out of your consciousness and letting it go, and you have to release it. And so these practices, I think, are very important and critical for a beginner as well as someone who's continuing on their spiritual journey, because we've talked about this so many times. When you're like, I thought I did this, I thought I learned this lesson, why is it coming up again, why is it bothering me again? Well, you got some more to let go. And
Mhm.
so um to kick this off, Uni, why don't you give us maybe a couple of your go-to releasing practices? I will let everybody know, like in the chart that we have on the Google Doc, there's about 35 different practices, or modalities, however you want to refer to them. We're not going to touch on all of them. There's no way we could. I would love to, but that would be a whole series of episodes in and of itself. So, Uni, what are your go-tos for releasing?
Well, I'll say for me, um, my healing baths are really major for releasing.
Mm,
I incorporate herbs and oils, candles. I'll
yeah.
have a special soap that I use that is really helpful for releasing. And maybe I'll have a tea with me, some lemon water. You know what I mean? Like I really take, healing bath time very seriously when it comes to releasing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say if I had to give a couple of examples of different things that I work with, black walnut is amazing for releasing
Mm-hmm.
stuck energy and helping you to just really feel lighter. I would say, as far as an oil, maybe frankincense, that's a
Mm-hmm.
really good one for releasing. And ginger is huge for releasing. I love ginger because it makes you sweat more, which
Right.
leads me to another thing that I do, which is exercising.
Mm-hmm.
Exercising to sweat, or even getting in a sauna to sweat, really helps me to release stuck energy, that heat. It just
Mm-hmm.
burns away the things that I do not need, and it's absolutely amazing. And I would say a couple other things I like to do are journaling. I love journaling, just getting all my thoughts out. It helps me to have a clear mind, and to just kind of like work through all the extra stuff. And walking barefoot on the earth, earthing. I love
Earthing. Yeah.
taking my shoes off at the park or out in the backyard. Some of my family members and friends look at me like I'm crazy, but I feel good every time I do it. I feel so much better. I feel connected to the earth. I feel like I am, letting go. And I know you said things, my go tos, but I did want to add one that we talked about yesterday. Screaming, yelling,
Yeah.
in a controlled environment, though. So, like I was telling Umi guys yesterday that sometimes when I'm on the highway driving and there's like not a lot of cars around and I'm just kind of like out there by myself, I literally scream in my car. And that helps me to release stuck energy in all of my chakras, from my root to my sacral to my solar plexus, my heart. It helps to really clear energy, and especially the throat chakra for sure, because a lot of things get stuck there. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's the one that I do not so often. I don't do it all the time, but it's really, one day I was just like overwhelmed, and I was like, I'm just gonna scream, and I did. And I felt better.
Right.
And so, yeah, so those are some go-tos, and one kind of wild card for me. What about you,
Yeah.
Umi?
I just want to say I love adding that one in. We don't have it on our list officially, but I definitely want to add it there, because if you think about how when you're frustrated you yell at people, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe if taking that energy and doing it in a more controlled, like,
Yeah.
purposeful, I don't want to say controlled, is more purposeful
Yeah.
way, and not just doing it, directed at someone.
Yeah.
Screaming in a forest, I think, is like the ideal for me.
I
Like
would
just going,
love to do that. Yeah, I would love that.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, you mentioned some of the ones that I definitely do. I'm very into the plant medicine, so I the spiritual baths are good. I've done ayahuasca as a huge release. That's like a big release. That's a major one, and I it needs to be done with a shaman, like in a very, spiritual setting, controlled setting. I don't recommend Aya to people. It's something you have to be called to. That's all I'm going to say on that. Forest bathing.
Yeah,
that's, anything connecting to nature is a great release. That I like. Definitely going out and just going into nature, especially a forest where the trees are around you. Like, I just feel like, people talk about tree hugging. I feel like they hug back.
they do.
you know, they just,
Feel.
they just,
They do.
oh, it just feels so good to go out into nature, and you feel so cleansed and light when you're
Mhm.
in the forest and when you come out of the forest. Um, another another modality that I like is I do regular full moon rituals,
Mhm.
where I clean my altar, I make sure that, I charge my I charge my crystals, and I try to clean up, maybe sweep through my house. I have a cinnamon broom. Sometimes I do this with the cinnamon sweep. Um And I also will, if I'm really struggling with something, burn, write things down that I want to let go of and burn them on the full moon as a releasing practice. Um, Smudging is another thing that I do very regularly. My kids used to hate it. Now they're like, ugh, is thumb going, can I get some sage?
Love it.
And I don't just use sage either, because white sage is sacred and it's endangered in some, and it's not always procured in the most sustainable ways. So I use garden sage, I use rosemary. There's other herbs that you can use that have a cleansing effect. And I burn copal too, but I get it from a sustainable source. But smudging for me has been a real practice of, sometimes, particularly when I feel like in our house there's a lot of stuck anger or sadness or any negativity, and I feel like everybody's getting testy. When the kids leave, I'll go through everybody's room. I go through with my smudge pot, and I just go through every room of the house, the bathroom, the bedrooms, the kitchen, the laundry room. I'll just go through the entire house and burn and say, prayers, and call in good energy, and release the negative energy. And I always notice a marked, like difference, a marked difference in the way everybody, is behaving and how they feel. And you know it's not always immediate, right? Because it takes some time sometimes for everything to balance out. But if, as a continued practice, I've certainly noticed the difference over the years of doing it, that old energy, stuck energy is pushed out. And open up the windows, you smudge, you let it all, cleaning is definitely a very big spiritual practice for me. Keeping the space clean. um there's so many other ones that I could mention, but those are the main ones that I go to. My new moon rituals, and smudging. Those are my really uh my go-tos. Yeah.
Awesome. Those are great. Those are amazing. I absolutely agree. I love to smudge, and I like to burn Palo Santo a lot, and
Hmm.
I make sure I get mine from a sustainable source as well. There's a lot of fake ones out there on the street,
Yeah.
um, but I feel a noticeable difference in my house as well, with the energies and things. And I love how you said that you call in new energies and you
Hmm.
call in fresh, mindsets and perspectives and things like that. And it's important for people to know that they can call that in. It's important
Right.
for people to know that that is possible.
Hmm.
It is definitely impossible to, it is possible to speak and make it be that your family starts to be open to new ways of thinking and being, really showing each other love and compassion,
Right.
that that's beautiful.
Yeah. All right. So I definitely encourage everyone to, take a look at the list that we have, and explore some of the things that we maybe didn't mention, because there's a lot on there. Um, so the next category that we have is receiving practices. And what are you receiving? Well, grace, intuition, nourishment, right? Receiving practices. And you're going to get, when you're practicing receiving, that's, I mean, how can you call things in? How can you manifest things if you're not willing to receive? And so receiving practices I find overlooked. I really do feel like they're overlooked. Although there's a lot of talk about meditation, and that's a big receiving practice, right? It's a practice of clearing, so and but it's also a practice of listening. It's really a practice of listening and receiving messages. But we don't talk about it as necessarily a receiving practice. And I feel like this is one that this category that, as we were talking about it, I was like, nah, I really like this because we don't talk about receiving as much. We talk about manifesting, and you can manifest things and lose them because you don't know how to receive. So what are your go-to receiving practices?
Well, first I want to say I love that that perspective, Umi. I think that's so important. We're taught to give. Like we really are. We're taught
Mm-hmm.
that we have to give, that we have to give to receive, that we have to be generous. You have to. And while yes, I like to think of myself as a generous person. I'm helpful. I care about people, and I want to see the world be a better place, and I want to give, my energy towards doing that. If I don't allow myself to receive, I find myself depleted, exhausted. I find myself, I may feel lonely, like I have no support or guidance. And it's because, like you said, we have really been drilled. It's been drilled into us that, sometimes receiving isn't good, or like you said, it's overlooked. We're really told like you have to give, you know what I
Right.
mean? And again, that's true, but we're missing the other side of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that you brought that up. And I'll say for me, some of my favorite or like my go-to receiving practices would be going out in nature. Number one, I receive so much from nature, just observing. I smell the flowers. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said a couple weeks ago, I snap twigs, and I love the smell of pine. I love to receive from nature. Like it helps me to clear out any stagnant, energy, and it really helps to like renew my mind and feel better. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I love to receive with, I guess working with crystals is a big one for me. I've definitely gotten a lot from working with crystals. I haven't been wearing them, but I really want to start again. Like my crystal bracelets, like my beaded bracelets and things like
Mm-hmm.
those always kept me grounded. They helped me to stay focused in challenging environments. I feel like I really received from wearing my crystals and working with them, meditating with them. And as you said, meditating is, that's another receiving practice as well, to
Right.
meditate. And the final one, if I had to say something, I would say the sun, sitting out in the sun. I
Mm-hmm.
receive so much from the sun. Like, the other day I wasn't feeling so good. I was, a little down in the dumps a little bit. And I'm telling you, I went to the beach and I was out in the sun, and immediately I felt uplifted
Mm-hmm.
just being out there. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I receive in that way as well by, just letting the
Yeah.
sun do what the sun does. I always tell people it's magical. I don't have to do anything. I go out in the sun and I receive, and
Mm-hmm.
it just gives me so much life. So yeah, what
Yeah.
about you, Umi?
Yeah. I love that. I feel like it makes sense that the sun for you would be a wonderful way to connect. I love that. Um, for me, gratitude.
Mm,
Gratitude has been a really huge practice for me in receiving, because if you're grateful for it before you can physically see it, that pulls it in. You you're being grateful. If you're grateful for what you already can see, more will come in. More will come in because, you know, it's preparing you. It's who wants to give to someone who's ungrateful, And also when you're not in gratitude and you're not grateful, things may be there that you don't even recognize. You don't even recognize how blessed you are. You're in this mode and this funk of feeling like, oh, I never get, or I don't get what I want, or I'm not getting enough of what I want, because you're not being grateful for what's around you. And I can tell you, as somebody who struggled with depression for most of their life, gratitude was a game changer. It was a game changer. Being grateful for the people who were in my life at the time that they were in my life, being grateful for the lessons that I learned, being grateful for, you know, the little things that I did have, before I had my own home, being grateful for the house before I got the house. There was so much that just changed in me, that transformed in me from having a serious gratitude practice. I mean, a gratitude practice can change your mood in the middle of a situation. Like, you can be in the middle of arguing with somebody, and if you stop and take a minute and go, I am so grateful to have this person in my life. I'm so grateful. Like, you could be fighting with your kids, or, arguing with your kids over whatever, and they getting on your last nerve, and, oh, I can't wait for you to turn 18 and get out of my house, Or you can stop before you say that and take yourself in a room or in the bathroom, or maybe I do it standing in front of my kids. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you were born. I'm so grateful that I have you in my life. I'm so grateful, to be your parent. I'm so grateful that we're moving through this. I'm so, and just the power of that to shift the energy into a receiving of good rather than an experience of negativity. Right. So gratitude has been big. Another one would be visioning. And visioning is different than visualization. Visioning is a practice that I learned from Reverend Michael Beckwith at Agape International Spiritual Center. It's essentially, it's a receiving practice. It's when you are looking to start something new, when you feel you got this intuitive hit, like that, spirit wants me to do this. And we did it when we first started this channel. Like, we did a visioning session, and I've done several, visioning sessions around this podcast. And it's essentially asking questions, empowering questions. What is Spirit's highest and greatest vision for this project? And then you just listen. You listen for the answer. What would Spirit, what do I need to release in order to make this project come to pass? What do I need to learn to make this project come to pass? And it's a series of questions. There's a whole practice around it. Anybody who's interested, there's a book called Life Visioning. That is really, it takes you through all the steps. So definitely recommend that as a resource. But visioning was, I didn't realize how many ways you could use the visioning practice. And so it was something that I was working with my spiritual practitioner, and she said, I was having some issues with, someone, and she was like, ask go into a visioning session and ask what the highest and greatest outcome of this relationship is. What's the highest vision for this relationship? And receive, your answers. Get your answers. It's a way of intentionally connecting to Spirit and getting answers that you need. And they don't always come in the moment. They may come, after you're finished with your session, or, however you do it. But visioning has really been a great, receiving practice for me. Those are probably the two biggest ones, I would have to say. Definitely, like you said, working with nature and going out in the nature. I just love it. Like, that's one of my favorite. Connecting with nature and being in nature is like, it can hit all of these categories. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. But those are my two big ones: the gratitude and visioning.
I love those. Those are extremely important. Like you said, with gratitude, you're able to, really see what you have. Like if you don't, you receive because you're like, oh, this is available to me. This is here to me. That, you have something, that maybe you didn't have before. Just really thinking about that can be, really, like you said, life changing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've always had that mindset of, just being grateful, sometimes to a fault, but I've learned to be more, to balance it out a little bit more, you know what I mean? Because,
Right.
you can definitely go overboard with that, just like with anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the visioning, I know, I've learned a lot under Queen Afua, and she actually taught us a lot about like her version of visioning, where
Right.
we ask, a question and we receive the answer. A lot of times she would encourage us to do it around water, if we're near like a lake or a river or the ocean, or even in the shower, or
Mm-hmm.
if you're taking a healing bath, to like really allow, because water is a great visioning tool. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, those are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. My pleasure. Excuse me. One thing I did want to point out is that the releasing and the receiving kind of go together. If you're releasing negative energy, you want to call in the good. You want to call in what you're looking for to replace that negative energy, because you don't want to leave room for that negativity to come back in. So those two categories of practices really do go hand in hand. Like you have to call in and release. um I think I didn't mention meditation, but I feel like meditation also kind of hits all of these. It's one of the major practices. Stillness is a huge, practice, and it's definitely one that allows you to receive messages, to receive, just divine intelligence, to be able to connect to the divine intelligence. So I don't want to I don't want to brush past this without mentioning meditation, although I'm sure it's going to come up multiple times.
Mhm. Mhm.
Definitely. Um okay, so we're on to repatterning. This I love that word. I love that we're using that word. And repatterning, kind of what it is it's transforming your mind. It is um just shifting your beliefs. It's working on that inner self, working on that ego. And your ego has built up this protective layer, and it really does, at times act like a barrier between us and spirit. So you have to do some work on it, and be able to reprogram your mind. As much as I'm not really a fan of the word reprogram, but it that is kind of what it is. I like repatterning better because you're in a pattern of negativity. And so we're trying to get you in a pattern of, grace, in a pattern of receiving, in a pattern of unexpected good. Just in a pattern of healing, and not, this negative lack mentality. And so, you know, um let's see, what do you have as your repatterning practices?
I want to say, for me, I came into the concept of repatterning like initially as subconscious reprogramming. That was kind of like the catchphrase at the time, a few years ago when I started to think
Mhm.
about this. And one of the things that I, really started to do was to change my eating habits. Like that was like probably one of the first things that I did. You know, I stopped eating red meat. I went vegan for a while. I settled on like a pescatarian more diet because that's what really aligns with me, mostly at this time. But yeah, like changing my diet and eating more consciously, It really helped me to change some things, and it helped me to, really start to feel, more empowered, because I was making decisions for myself. I wasn't necessarily just eating, the standard American diet that was like fed to me, that I know that, when I eat certain things, it doesn't really agree with me. I started to listen to my body, and so, yeah, so, eating more fresh fruits and vegetables was like major. Like, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it's major even still to this day. I'm a big advocate for that. I believe that we have to get out of the pattern of eating frozen, these convenient meals, frozen and packaged
Right.
foods. So that's probably number one and two for me. It's like really, really big. I think when we address our diet, I think that it helps us to repattern in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I would say is forgiveness. Like, I started to think
Mm-hmm.
of, things in different ways, like things that I had experienced. And um, I'm very, I do a lot of thinking, and I try to look at things from different perspectives. Sometimes it's hard to do that when you feel like you've kind of been like a victim of, certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But when I take those as lessons, instead, and really think about how can I work with that, or what, maybe it's going to help me to help myself or someone else in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what am I learning here when I really let those things go, and start to look at things from a more forgiving perspective. Like, it helps me to repattern, because I'm like feeling lighter. I have room to think about other things. I can
Right.
focus on other things
Right.
instead of, replaying whatever things have happened to me. So, yeah, I would say those are my two top. And then I know you mentioned plant medicine before, but yeah, plant medicine has really helped me to repattern as well. And I know we speak about, eating fresh fruits and vegetables, but when we say plant medicine, we're talking about, ayahuasca, we're talking about mushrooms, we're talking about cambo, we're talking about, just different things that help you to really dig a little deeper,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that we are not using those as a means to an escape or any sort of a shortcut, but we are working with that energy consciously, so that we
Right.
can, really start to repattern and overcome. And so I'll say, for me, like, mushrooms has been really, really key, especially microdosing. I'm not a big fan of, hero journeys and things
Yeah.
like that, but microdosing has really helped me. The mycelium, it knows what to do.
Right.
It knows what to do. And so I don't abuse it. I don't use it. I work with it, and it works
Right.
for me. And so, yeah, I would say those are definitely my top three. What about you, Umi?
Yeah. Um, Definitely. I've done the microdosing mushrooms too, and I love it because you don't have this big effect. It's a subtle.
Yeah.
It's very subtle. It's really great for like reworking thought patterns. I really do. I love that. So my big repatterning practice is affirmative prayer.
Hmm.
That is my really big repatterning practice. And I say that because it's affirmative prayer is not like regular, Christian or Muslim or whatever other prayers where you're asking for things or you're complaining to God or anything like that. Affirmative prayer is really getting into your oneness and remembering that you already have it all,
Hmm.
that everything is already right because we are one with God, and it helps to move things out of the way, and it helps to reprogram and repattern your thoughts to look for good, to know that there is good, that to know that we're in our school, this is a lesson, things are going to happen, yes, but also it's there for a reason. It's moving something for a reason. If there's a delay, it's there for a reason. And so prayer has been huge for me. Affirmative prayer, um, especially, and there's different versions of affirmative prayer. Ernest Holmes did prayer treatments. Reverend Michael teaches affirmative prayer based off of that, but he adds an extra step of gratitude. And there are other people who teach affirmative prayer, or spiritual prayer treatment is another name for it. But that has been major, I mean, life changing in the like repatterning of my mind. And along with affirmations, just pure affirmations. The difference between an affirmative prayer and an affirmation is an affirmation is just a single statement of, you know, something affirmative, like I am, I am. I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head, and it's just not coming to me. And I have a million like
Right.
affirmations, right?
I'm
I
well.
am abundant.
Mhm.
The big one that I used to have when I was broke was abundance is my normal.
Yes.
Abundance is my normal. That it's just a statement. It's a single statement. Abundance is my normal. That's an affirmation. And affirmative prayer, it really takes you through, you know, the way Reverend Michael teaches is gratitude. You start in gratitude. You're grateful for what you already have. You're grateful and you recognizing, you go into recognizing what God or spirit or whatever you call the greater, being, the higher power, and then you go into your oneness. I am one with this. And you really get into feeling, like it's really about changing the way you feel about how things are, about the appearance of things. And then, after you go through the recognition and the one and the unification of yourself and this oneness, then you get into the realization, which to me is the affirmations, right? It's That's where the affirmations fit into the affirmative prayer. And it's declaring that you already have whatever it is that you're looking for. I am abundant. I am supplied. I am loved. I have all of these things because I am God and God is me and we are one. And so I must have it all. I must, it must be. And so that when you make a regular practice of prayer, it really does reprogram your entire thought process. And you have to do it regularly. It has to be a practice. It has to be consistent. But prayer has been definitely top of my list. Top of my list. There's more steps to the prayer, but those are the ones I want that I'm trying to focus on. I mean, after the realization of all of these affirmations, it's really just being thankful and then releasing it and letting it go and knowing that it is so. Sometimes you have to pray the same prayer many times before before your brain is like, okay, I got this. So yeah, prayer has been definitely prayer and affirmations. I have affirmations all over my house, all over the place, not just for me, for my kids. I've mentioned this before. How I just have sticky notes and stuff, or I write it on the mirrors in the bathrooms with like a chalk crayon. um and so yeah, that's pretty big for the repatterning. um I want to say definitely meditation has been another one, because stillness was hard for me. It's still hard for me. I'm still having issues with stillness. And so meditation and chanting. So I consider chanting a form of meditation. If you do transcendental meditation, that's what it is. It's the repetition of a mantra in your head is transcendental meditation. I used to uh, practice Nichiren Buddhism, so Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That was huge for me in transforming and repatterning my brain to be okay with stillness and to be okay with not always feeling like I have to act, right? Because we live in a society that you got to do. If you're not doing, you don't deserve anything. When really that's not necessarily the West is not the way spirit works at all. Do you have to do sometimes? Yes, faith without works is dead. I believe that, you know, wholeheartedly. However, sometimes you're meant to sit still. Sometimes you're pushing when you don't need to. You're not trusting. You know, that's part of the repatterning, is trusting that spirit's got you. You know, and that is why prayer has been big for me, but meditation as well, to be able to sit, to wait, to, you know, receive through meditation. Oh, any final thoughts on that one, on repatterning, before I move on to integrating and activating?
No, not really. I mean, the word patience has come to mind as you were just speaking about meditation and prayer. Just being more patient, with yourself, and allowing yourself to, really go through these changes and repattern yourself, especially if you've been living a certain way for a long period of time. You know what I mean? It's, whew, you
Mhm.
spend years, building yourself or being built into a certain type of way, or having certain habits and things, but you've got to be patient with yourself, and give yourself that space and that opportunity to really be changed from the inside out. And sitting in meditation and even in chanting, because it forces you to be still and allow the energies of the mantras that you're speaking to work for you. But I think that yeah, it's all about being patient,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So the next category that we have is integrating and activating. And the keywords that we have for this is, they are embodiment, wholeness, grounding, and empowerment. And so I love this category because we talk about embodying, but like that's really the key. This integration, this, you go out, you find this spiritual knowledge, you get these intuitive hits, but how do you put them into your life? Like, where do they fit in? And all spiritual practice is really the answer to that. But there are specific practices that really help with integrating and embodying. And so, what are your go tos? What do you go for?
Well, you know me, Omi. I am into cardiology, and it has helped me so much. And I know, like you, you're into astrology and cardiology. We're both into cardiology and astrology, but I would say that astrology really led me to cardiology. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And several other esoteric practices and things, but I would say these two help me to understand a lot more about myself, because the word, the phrase "it was written" really came, it just came alive for me, where I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm able to understand, maybe not necessarily why certain things are happening, but I know that they are in alignment with what is supposed to happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Human design also helped me with that big time. I
Mhm. Mhm.
tell people, when I learned about human design, it was almost like a therapy session. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm like, oh, okay, I see now. It
Yeah.
really, really, it really helped me to um like really expand on my identity, or be more stronger and or more stable in who I am, because I feel like I was not being around a lot of people who were like into the same things that I was into, or just understanding that I really felt by myself. Really, I felt alone, and so understanding or seeing almost my life written in a lot of these different these different systems. And I was just like, oh wow, like, okay, this is how it's really supposed to be. Like, it's literally written here,
Mhm.
you know.
Right.
Like, I can't hide from this. If I read your profile, I'm not going to relate to it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
My feet fit in the shoes that are set before me. Like, I get it. So it's helped me to have a lot of stability within myself, because I feel stronger within myself by really being able to see like the reflection of who I am and who I've grown to be, and understand that it's not a mistake that I'm, the way I am. It's not a mistake. It's not anything that I'm doing wrong. It's not anything that
Mhm.
my parents did wrong or my friends or family. Like nobody did anything wrong. And that's where, forgiveness, really came in as well. And it helped me to forgive, because it's like everyone's playing their part. Like we're all doing what we're supposed to do. And I'm being who I'm supposed to be. So yeah, I would say those those esoterics really, really helped me a lot to integrate and activate myself, because I feel more confident, and I feel like, okay, I'm supposed to do this. You know what I
Right.
mean? Some people are supposed to write, some people are supposed to sing, some people are supposed to dance. Everyone has their own ministry. But really being able to see my life in these systems, it's helped me to be more confident in who I am. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'd say those are the top three for me. What about you?
Oh, yeah, I definitely relate to the different esoterics as far as like astrology, numerology and astrology were kind of my into that. Um, and so those were pretty big in realizing, particularly in realizing that there is a light and a dark to every aspect, every sign, to every um planet, to every, whatever, and all of the different modalities. I feel like when you get into astrology and numerology, you just kind of go down you have to try them all,
Yeah,
because then you realize that they're all telling you the same
they
thing
all
about
say the
yourself. They're
same thing.
all telling you the same thing. And that's where you're like, oh, this is like for real. Like this
Yeah,
is, you know what I mean? And and then it helps you to learn where, okay, I have lessons around this thing. And there's a light to this and a dark to this. And I've been living in the dark of it. Now I know how to shift into the light. It gives you practical ways of shifting into the light, which is what I love about astrology, numerology. I don't use any of those things as predictive um technologies. I don't feel that you can predict. That's, and I'm not playing with free will anyway. Like let you, you just yeah, no. So, but when it comes to really understanding your makeup, understanding what your contracts were, who your contracts were with, all those things, like those are tools that I use for that, for figuring those types of things out. Definitely things like what we did last week, which was the self assessment and self awareness, like really taking inventory. And we did it in a talk format of like here's a question and an answer and list, but doing it in the context of meditation, of sitting with yourself and spirit and asking spirit what I need to change. What do I need to do? Where am I blind? What am I not seeing? And really then listening for the answer and being disciplined about putting those things into my life and integrating them into my everyday life. um I feel like we don't have discipline as a spiritual practice, but it's kind of, it really is, being disciplined. And we're in Virgo season, so Virgo's all about discipline and routine and all that. And so that really is a big part of it. Is like, all right, I've learned all these things. Now I need to use them. I need to put them into my life. How do I make this a natural part of who I am, a natural part of my life? And so there's just so many ways that you can do that. But I feel like the meditation and sitting in like how do I take these things into my life so that I feel them. Also, the repatterning practices really help you to integrate, because as you change your thinking, you further embody these practices. You further embody these principles, the principles of oneness, the principles of omnipresent love, the principles of abundance. Like you really get to take those in and own them and make them a part of who you are. And it empowers you to really move forward in confidence. It's that saying, I'm being reminded of that saying, like, stop telling everybody how big the storm is and start telling the storm how big your God is. Well, this infinite power, it's big. And when you start to integrate this and you activate it in your life, that's when you start to see these changes, the positive changes that we're all, I mean, should it be the purpose of our practice? No, our purpose is to connect with God and remember who we are. But it really helps to have some things move and change in your life. It's inevitable that things are going to move and change in your life as you pull closer to the divine. So yeah, that's really what I have. And there's a few other things. I've talked about witness consciousness before, so I don't really want to keep going into that. But witness consciousness is a big one where I'm able to just step back in a moment and witness the pattern that's coming up and shift the pattern. Witness consciousness is like, it's like being your own. You know how they have the angel and the devil? It's like being your own little angel on your shoulder going, hey, look at this. Is this really, how you want to experience this? Like, and you really are witnessing yourself, witnessing, oh, I'm doing this. Well, why am I doing this? What is it? Where is this coming from? It's that. But I've talked about this before, so I don't want to keep going on and on about that. Yeah, I think that's really, those are the ones that I have for that. Our last category is connecting and kind of restoring ourselves, reconnecting into the divine, reconnecting with our relationships with our family, with our friends, with the people, our community. So it's really more about the love and the oneness. Well, we don't have a lot of time, so what's your like top practice?
Gee. Um, my top practice. Dang, I don't know. I'm gonna spend more time trying to pick one.
Okay, well then just
No, no,
throw
no. I'm
throw
just
something out there.
joking. So I'll say for me, definitely, oh, probably my personal rituals and ceremonies. So like there's definitely certain things that I do that have they help me to feel connected into myself, to want to God, to everyone and everything. Like it there's definitely things that I do. I'll say a simple one that I do is my morning drink. I don't always drink coffee. Sometimes I have just the oat milk with cinnamon and ginger and cacao. It's like my favorite blend, and I'll have that. And, something about drinking that, you know what I mean? It just
Mm-hmm.
makes me feel like really, I don't, it makes me feel strangely supported, and it makes me feel like, I don't know. I know cacao is really good for opening the heart chakra. It's really good for like really
Mm-hmm.
great heart medicine. Ginger keeps the heart pumping and keeps the blood flowing through the body. And cinnamon, has so many benefits as well. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but it does have several benefits. And so, if I had to choose one, because I definitely do it every single day, it's probably that. And then I have like other daily things that I do, but it's like I love that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's my one.
Okay.
It's probably
Yeah.
if I thought about it, I'd probably choose another one, but I'll stick with
Yeah.
it.
I feel like we've talked about so many of them. Like I could say so many for this. Like definitely affirmative prayer and other things
Yeah,
like that. But for something, my top one, oh, connecting to nature,
yeah,
being in nature. And the reason why I say that is, for me, um, it all clicked when I started learning about the chakras. It all clicked to me because I'm also a gardener, and so being a gardener and then learning about chakras and the heart, the color for the heart chakra is green,
right.
and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense because nature is so green. There's so much green, and so for me, being in nature reminds me that I am loved, that God is love, that nature's greenness to me reminds me that God loves me, that God loves us all, that God loves the earth, that, and I'm using God, and I know a lot of people don't like that word. So, but spirit, higher power, not some man in the sky. The one power, the universal power. But it just reminds me that, this power, this awesomeness, it loves us. It has created, this world, this earth with all of this lush green. So all you have to do is look out and see it. And so going out and sitting in nature, even in the wintertime, the evergreens, it's not as green in the winter, but it's just, there's always some green somewhere outside that just will remind you, you're loved. You are loved. We are created in love and surrounded by love. And so, yeah, that is it. Also, nature also reminds me that we are, like, because we are one with nature. Like, we really are. Like, half of our respiratory system is the trees. So without the trees, there is no respiratory system. So that interconnectedness, and how we were essentially, carbon and minerals and things like that, and then we were kind of knit together in our mother's womb and birthed, and that we essentially are nature. So yeah, connecting with nature is probably like top of my list. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah.
definitely a top for me too. And it's so funny you were mentioning the green, because I literally, when I walk around, I'm like, sometimes I stare at the grass because I want to to that green. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
it's not always, maybe there's not a lot of foliage or trees around us, or it's, winter or whatever, fall or whatever season it is. But
Mhm.
that green, it really, it's a healer for sure. I
Yeah.
People need to tap into that.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, we are at the end of our hour, and we went through all of our categories. I definitely encourage people to download that list. Probably going to add some things that we kind of talked about that came up in our conversation to that list. I did want to say a few things. One, this is not law, right? The categories that we presented these in were really for the convenience of explaining these things. um Consistency with any spiritual practice is going to be top, like the most important thing is being consistent. And though we presented you with a bunch of different practices, and we have a bunch of different practices that we use, being consistent with one or two is really all you need to get moving forward in your spiritual journey. And as you're on that spiritual journey, you know, one practice that you're using, it may not work for you anymore. You may need to try something different, or you may need to add something to your routine. You may need to let go of something for a little while and try something different. It's going to ebb and flow. Go with what spirit is telling you your soul wants. Go, do what your soul is calling for. And it may be something that we haven't mentioned. It may be something that we haven't talked about, but we're really just giving this to you all as an example of what we've used to move forward, and some of the things that we've used that really helped us transform our minds, transform our lives. Um, and so it was really important for me to say that, and just be really gentle with yourself. Don't beat yourself up because you fall off of your spiritual practice. Just start it again. You have anything to add to that, Uni?
I love what you said there. That's so important for people to remember that, you may fall off, life happens, things change, you move, we
Mm-hmm.
change jobs, things happen, sometimes you just wake up on the other side of the bed, or, you know, maybe you forget, it's all good. If you know like certain things are making you feel better, on a cellular level, that's the thing. I feel like a lot of times the goodness that we feel or that we're taught to feel, it's kind of on the shallow side. It's more like entertainment, and it's not as deep as when you really tap into spirit, like you really feel good from the inside out. And so I think it's really important for people to like really, really think about that. If you
Mhm.
don't feel fulfilled, if you don't feel connected with yourself, if you feel unsupported, if you feel, these different things, if you feel like you are, you need to release, and you're feeling heavy, these are, some things that could help you. So yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Um, yeah, I think that's it. So I guess we're gonna leave it there and just say, I'm so grateful for every last one of you who joins, who watches live, who watches after the fact. We so appreciate you, and we're so grateful for you all. I really pray that you have received something from this that will, help you on this journey. You know, um, we are your peer guides here. We're not perfect. We still struggle with discipline. We have an accountability circle. That is what we how we got to this point of, it was through the accountability circle and just holding each other accountable for reaching our goals, for our spiritual practices, whatever they are. Get you a buddy. Get you a buddy. I'm telling you, it really helps. Um, and so I wanted to leave you all with an affirmation that I have that really has helped me in developing my spiritual practice. And that affirmation is, I have an unshakable spiritual practice. You can take that, you can make it your own, use it. Um, that has helped me in remembering to have discipline and remembering that that unshakable practice is what you lean into when times get rough.
That's
That's
beautiful.
all I got. Anything you need that you want to say before we sign off?
I want to say that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that affirmation. I will be using that in my journey as well. I'll be adding that to my list. And yes, thank you all so much for watching. Remember, please to like, comment, and share. Let us know what you think. Share some of your spiritual practices. What do you do? How are you healing? How are you repatterning and, connecting with yourself? Let us know. We'd love to get more information out there, as life is life and there's so much going on in the world today. We want to stay grounded, we want to stay spiritual, we want to stay connected. So yeah, thank you all so much.
All right. That's it for today. Peace.
Peace.